Hello, I'm Alexander Trudell, Masters of Architecture graduate, and today I will be presenting the conference paper, The Reintroduction of Japanese Metabolism to Sustainable Architecture, co-authored by myself and Dr. Fan Zhang of Griffith University. I will begin with a brief overview of Japanese metabolism and its importance today. To start, Japanese metabolism architecture is not only a style but a philosophy for buildings predicated on change, with no completed form. Developed by Kishio Kurokawa in the 1950s, the buildings incorporated early modular design built around a central structure enabling the replacement of such modules. The failure of this philosophy came from the challenges of the 1970s and 80s, the beginning of the energy crisis, birth of sustainable design, and the death of the megastructure movement, all aspects that Japanese metabolism failed to address. However, seen from a contemporary perspective, Japanese metabolism provides meaningful insight and references for architecture of the future. The purpose of this study is to examine both sustainability and metabolism, their comparing and contrasting features, and exploring the opportunity of combining these two design philosophies and develop a set of design guidelines for integration into future practice. Two types of research were carried out during this study: theoretical research and expert interviews. The theoretical research method critically analyzed sustainability and metabolism, consisting of case studies and literature review. This analysis compared the similarities and discrepancies of the two philosophies and suggests opportunities for integration. Expert interviews were also conducted to gain insights from experts in academia and design practice. These interviews asked a number of open-ended questions regarding the feasibility and necessity of combining Japanese metabolism with sustainable design to help develop a set of design guidelines for the styles. The participants were widespread in their demographics, hailing from various countries with a significant amount of experience in practice or academia and a sufficient knowledge of both Japanese metabolism and sustainable design. A total of 6 interviews were conducted in July 2020 in the form of video calls. Here we explore the theoretical research conducted. The first significant piece of information covered in the research was the compromisation and deterioration of environmental aspects of a building being overlooked, reducing the sustainability of said building. One example of this was found in the first LEED Platinum building, the Philip Merrill Environmental Center, which suffered a failure of its building enclosure after only a few years. These failures can result in environmental, social, and economical impacts that can reduce or even negate the positive effects of these buildings. The sustainable case study, the Mesanaga Tower in Malaysia, provided a contrasting example of sustainable design. This building implemented many sustainable design strategies prior to LEED, including orientation for maximum efficiency, shading devices for passive cooling, vertical gardens that shade and ventilate the building, and open floor plans to promote natural ventilation. The core of this building acted as a heat sink, absorbing the daytime heat and radiating it out at night. Due to this sustainably conscious design, this building was used to develop sustainable design guidelines for the collaborative philosophy. Japanese metabolism architecture focused on questions of land and housing shortages and unplanned sprawl. The Nakagin Capsule Tower in Japan is a prime example of the possibilities of this philosophy. The tower consisted of a central core and interchangeable capsules that were anchored to it. These capsules were no more than a few square meters and were never intended to act as an apartment house. These modules, instead, were to act as temporary dwelling spaces for urban nomads. The failure of this building came from a lack of maintenance and eager development. Intended to last only 25 years, the capsules were never replaced on the structure and left to decay with only few still habitable. Followed by the preference for demolition over renovation, the Japanese metabolism philosophy quickly slipped into the history books. With the information gathered, the similarities and discrepancies were analyzed to provide opportunities. Although sustainable design was not present during the early years of Japanese metabolism, it was still present in the ideology as it strived for a resilient world. Both styles are driven by similar challenges: land scarcity, unequal development, pressures of infrastructure, and democratic issues in planning. Furthermore, the sustainable aspects of modular architecture have been discussed in previous conference papers. Sustainable architecture carries a physical resilience, however, lacks a philosophical perspective of building resilience. Used primarily in recent decades, sustainable architecture is mainly used to refer to recent eco-technical building solutions, new materials, and eco-labeling, and rarely to social and cultural settings and practices. Here, Japanese metabolism fills in the gaps of sustainability as it was designed to respond to the human and environmental catastrophes and vulnerability to natural disasters. With Japanese metabolism architecture, sustainable design can reduce construction waste by up to 52%. The philosophical resilience of metabolism can also incorporate growth into a building, giving it a sense of life. The initial failure of Japanese metabolism, predicated around the energy crisis and sustainability, would not succumb to the same fate, as the incorporation of sustainable design would reduce the energy and material costs for the building as a whole. This combined style of sustainable metabolism could further be applied to any number of styles, from Art Deco homes to postmodern galleries. It works well alone and with others. Here we will discuss the findings from the interviews conducted. Of the 6 interviews conducted, 2 stood out from the rest in the quality and quantity of information given. The following is a summary of the typical proponent's opinion from interviewee A and a mixed opinion from interviewee B. Professor A had a direct involvement in the design of the Mesinaga Tower in Malaysia and has worked with modular construction in the past. They explained that Japanese metabolism was ahead of its time and society was not quite ready to accept it on a global scale. Professor A is very enthusiastic about the idea of incorporating Japanese metabolism into sustainable design. They also expressed that all metabolism architecture is inherently sustainable, as the modules are prefabricated and the smaller size allows for less energy usage with higher density. They believe that this inherent sustainability proves important to the collaboration of metabolism and sustainable design, as it can be difficult to get society to be sustainable when it does not directly benefit them, and this underlying sustainability would allow those against the notion of sustainability to be more open to the idea. Professor A also makes an analogy of metabolism acting as a tree, growing to fill the spaces below, resembling how metabolism architecture is erected. Associate Professor B has over 35 years of experience in practice and 16 years in academia, with a particular interest in Japanese metabolism architecture. Professor B expressed their opinion that Japanese metabolism architecture was past its time and had a set of values that we have moved past. They believe that plug-in cities will not be revisited due to changing technology and political systems around the world, where countries are more focused on internal issues and the demand for commonality between all participants is too high. Furthermore, they believe that with mass production leading to mass individualization, there will be less of a need for factory line construction. Despite these opinions, they do believe that there are values in the metabolism philosophy at the time to build more sustainable, cohesive, and economical settlements with efficiency. These ideals still exist today, however, has been changed through production and society, with underlying principles still present. Overall, Professor B has a realistic sense of doubt in the reintroduction of Japanese metabolism due to the past failures and association with old metabolism ideals, but believes that there is an increased demand for customizable plug-in pieces for high-rise buildings. Despite the seemingly negative aspect of this participant's opinion, Professor B offers first-hand examples of what needs to be changed in metabolism for a social acceptance in the 21st century. From the interviews conducted, the participants were asked to propose integration guidelines for 3 overarching categories: overall building, modular design, and structure. The design guidelines for the overall building were following the metabolism typology featuring a 3-dimensional skeleton of long-term service. The building should incorporate sustainable design values to reduce environmental effects through various sustainable design strategies. The use of communal spaces should be heavily promoted to break up the matrix of modular units, and utilizing more resilient materials to maintain the building for longer periods of time. The modular design guidelines included having the modules as larger spaces than previous metabolist buildings, to have all possible parts of the building prefabricated to reduce construction waste, the possible removal and replacement of the modular units, incorporated greenery into the building for cleaner air naturally, and the allowance for customization of the individual modules. The final set of guidelines under structure were to allow for easy mobility of the individual units for transport, to include a built-in crane to the structure of the building for replacement of the modules, and the use of either a stem, cage, or hanging structural form. From this research, we have found that there is a clear space for sustainable design in the philosophy of Japanese metabolism architecture. As sustainable design focuses on the technical aspects of materiality and technology of a building, metabolism proposes a systematic conceptual approach to reorganizing the city and public systems. Through this, we see that the integration of these 2 philosophies is therefore not only possible, but also beneficial to one another. We also see the potential for the use of this combined style in many other types of buildings, as it can act as a catalyst. Finally, we would like to thank the interview participants, academics from the architectural design discipline in Griffith University, and the reviewers of this paper for their comments and suggestions. Thank you.